Top 1. Royal Graves of Ur. In 1927, beneath the scorching sands of southern Iraq, British archaeologist Leonard Woolley descended into what appeared to be just another ancient burial site in the ruins of Ur. But as layers of earth were carefully removed, an unsettling scene emerged. Dozens of human skeletons lay arranged in perfect order, adorned with gold jewelry, lapis lazuli, and ornate headdresses. They were not scattered or discarded. They were positioned with intention, as if frozen in the final moments of a solemn ceremony. There were no signs of struggle, no chaotic movement, only an eerie stillness. These individuals had not simply died. They had been placed there deliberately to accompany their ruler into eternity. This was not a tragic accident or a natural disaster. It was a carefully orchestrated act of ritual death, and it was never meant to be witnessed again. The site, now known as the Royal Cemetery of Ur, dates back to around 2600 BCE. Among its most haunting discoveries was the Great Death Pit, a burial chamber containing the remains of more than 70 individuals. These were not ordinary citizens. They were attendants, musicians, soldiers, and servants, identified by the objects buried with them. Golden lyres rested beside musicians. Soldiers lay in formation with spears and helmets. Women wore elaborate headdresses crafted from gold, silver, and precious stones. Their bodies were arranged in orderly rows, suggesting a ritual marked by precision and control rather than chaos or violence. For years, scholars believed these attendants willingly consumed poison to follow their ruler into the afterlife, reflecting a culture deeply rooted in loyalty and divine kingship. However, modern forensic analysis using CT scans and advanced imaging revealed a far more disturbing truth. Many of the skulls bore clear signs of blunt force trauma, consistent with deliberate execution. Some bodies showed evidence of heat exposure, suggesting preservation techniques were used to delay decomposition during elaborate funeral rites. Even more unsettling, traces of mercury were detected in certain remains, possibly used in the preservation process. This was not a peaceful passage. It was a systematic and ritualized killing. The Sumerians viewed their rulers as intermediaries between gods and humans, and death did not diminish that authority. Instead, it extended it into the afterlife. The elaborate burials, complete with chariots, animals, luxury goods, and human attendants, reflected a belief that the royal court would continue to function beyond death. Maintaining cosmic and social order required absolute obedience, even unto sacrifice. Participation may have been portrayed as an honor, but the archaeological evidence suggests a rigid system where power dictated fate with chilling finality. Despite the magnitude of the discovery, early interpretations softened its brutality, emphasizing voluntary sacrifice and ritual devotion. Museums displayed the artifacts as symbols of cultural brilliance, while the darker implications remained understated. Only decades later did advancing technology expose the violent reality behind the grandeur. By then, the narrative of noble sacrifice had already taken root in public consciousness, quietly reshaping how this ancient power was perceived. The graves of Ur reveal more than funerary customs. They expose a civilization where authority extended beyond life itself, enforced through ritualized death. If an entire royal court could be methodically led to execution in the name of cosmic order, then the true foundation of early civilization may not have been cooperation or progress, but obedience shaped by fear. And if Ur was not an exception, but a model, how many other civilizations built their legacy on the silent graves of the loyal? Top 2. Pharaoh Retainer Burials. In 1899, beneath the relentless sun of Abydos in southern Egypt, archaeologist Emile Amelino uncovered a vast and unsettling burial complex near the tomb of a ruler known as Jer, a pharaoh of Egypt's first dynasty. What initially appeared to be a network of subsidiary graves soon revealed a far more disturbing reality. Hundreds of smaller tombs surrounded the royal burial in precise, deliberate formation. Each contained a human body, carefully placed and buried at the exact same time as the king. There were no signs of disease, no evidence of natural disaster, and no indication of prolonged burial activity. These individuals had not died over time. They had died together, and they had died for one man. Further excavations led by Sir Flinders Petrie confirmed the scale and intention of the phenomenon. Around Pharaoh Jer's tomb alone, archaeologists identified over 300 subsidiary burials. Similar arrangements were discovered at the tombs of other early rulers such as Aha and Jet. The graves belonged to servants, officials, craftsmen, guards, and possibly members of the royal court. Their positions reflected hierarchy and function, suggesting they were meant to continue serving the pharaoh in the afterlife. Many tombs contain personal items, pottery, tools, jewelry, and seals bearing royal insignia, reinforcing the idea that these individuals held defined roles within an eternal court. What made the discovery even more chilling was the synchronization of death. Archaeological and osteological analyses revealed no signs of trauma, typical of violent struggle, leading researchers to conclude that the victims were likely killed through controlled and ritualized means, possibly by poison or strangulation. Their orderly burial and the uniformity of the graves pointed to a highly organized, state-directed event. This was not an act of chaos or desperation, but a carefully planned demonstration of absolute authority. The emerging Egyptian state was not merely political, it was divine. The pharaoh was regarded as a living god, and serving him in death was presented as both a duty and an honor, though the true element of choice remains deeply uncertain. These retainer sacrifices were concentrated within Egypt's first dynasty, around 3100 to 2900 BCE, a period when the newly unified state was consolidating power. The mass burials served not only religious purposes, but also political ones. They were powerful public spectacles that reinforced the pharaoh's divine status and the irreversible hierarchy of society. In death, as in life, order, known as ma'at, had to be preserved. The royal court would continue to function beyond the grave, ensuring cosmic stability. The message to the living was unmistakable. Loyalty to the pharaoh extended beyond mortality. Then, almost as suddenly as it began, the practice disappeared. By the second dynasty, human retainers were replaced with shabti figurines, small carved servants intended to perform labor in the afterlife. This shift suggests a profound transformation in governance and ideology. The Egyptian state had grown stable and powerful enough that it no longer needed mass human sacrifice to legitimize authority. Symbolism replaced spectacle. Control had become institutional, embedded in religion, bureaucracy, and culture, rather than enforced through ritual death. For centuries, the full implications of these burials remained overshadowed by the grandeur of pyramids and golden treasures. Early interpretations often frame the sacrifices as voluntary acts of devotion, softening the harsher reality. Yet modern archaeology paints a clearer picture of a society in which divine kingship demanded the ultimate price. These were not isolated incidents, but systematic demonstrations of power at the very birth of one of history's greatest civilizations. If Egypt's legendary stability was forged through such calculated displays of absolute control, then its monumental achievements may rest upon foundations far darker than its golden legacy suggests. And if the first unified state perfected this method of power, what other civilizations learned to rule not by sacrifice of bodies, but by sacrifice of will? Top 3. Shang Sacrificial Tombs. In 1928, in the quiet farmlands near Anyang in China's Henan province, archaeologists began excavations that would uncover one of the most chilling testaments to ritualized power in the ancient world. Beneath layers of compacted earth lay the ruins of Yinshu, the last capital of the Shang dynasty, dating back over 3,000 years. What started as a search for early Chinese inscriptions soon exposed a grim and systematic practice. Large tombs belonging to Shang kings were surrounded by deep pits filled not with treasures alone, but with human remains. Rows of skeletons, bound and decapitated, were discovered alongside chariots, weapons, and ceremonial artifacts. This was not a battlefield, it was a ritual landscape of death, and every burial told the same silent story. The Shang dynasty, which ruled from approximately 1600 to 1046 BCE, was deeply rooted in a belief system centered on ancestor worship and divine communication. The king served as the supreme intermediary between the living world and powerful ancestral spirits. To maintain favor with these spirits, the Shang elite conducted elaborate rituals that often included human sacrifice. Oracle bone inscriptions, etched onto turtle shells and ox scapulae, provide direct written evidence of these practices. These ancient records meticulously documented sacrificial events, listing the number of victims, their origins, and the purposes of the rituals. Some inscriptions describe the offering of dozens, even hundreds, of human lives in a single ceremony to seek guidance, ensure victory in battle, or appease ancestral forces. Excavations at royal tombs, such as those attributed to King Wu Ding, revealed sacrificial pits containing prisoners of war, slaves, and possibly individuals from subjugated tribes. Many of the skeletons show signs of violent death, including decapitation, dismemberment, and blunt force trauma. In some cases, bodies were arranged in specific patterns, suggesting ritual choreography rather than chaotic slaughter. Other pits contain individuals buried alive, their bodies curled in confined spaces with no grave goods, marking them as offerings rather than honored dead. Alongside these human sacrifices were horses and chariots, symbolizing the continuation of royal authority and mobility in the afterlife. One of the most striking discoveries was the tomb of Fu Hao, a powerful queen and military commander. Her burial site contained not only an extraordinary collection of bronze vessels, jade ornaments, and weapons, but also the remains of numerous sacrificed individuals and animals. The presence of these victims within such a prestigious tomb underscored the normalization of human sacrifice at the highest levels of Shang society. Ritual killing was not an occasional act of desperation. It was an institutionalized practice embedded within the political, religious, and social fabric of the dynasty. Despite the overwhelming archaeological and textual evidence, early interpretations often downplayed the scale and brutality of Shang sacrificial practices, framing them as symbolic or exaggerated. However, continued excavations throughout the 20th and 21st centuries have confirmed that these rituals were both frequent and meticulously organized. The Shang state wielded sacrifice as a demonstration of divine legitimacy and absolute control. By offering human lives to the ancestors, the king reinforced his role as the essential link between heaven and earth, ensuring that cosmic order and royal authority remained inseparable. The sacrificial tombs of the Shang dynasty reveal a civilization where spiritual devotion and political dominance were fused through ritualized violence. Power was not only displayed in bronze and jade, but in the calculated taking of human life. If communication with the divine required such profound offerings, then obedience to the throne was not merely expected, it was sanctified. And in a world where the gods were believed to speak through blood, dissent may have been seen not just as rebellion, but as a threat to the very balance of the cosmos. If an entire political system could be sustained through ritual sacrifice, sanctioned by faith and recorded as state procedure, how many other ancient societies justified control and conquest through the language of the sacred? Top 4 Aztec Templo Mayor. In 1978, during routine electrical work in the heart of Mexico City, workers struck a massive circular stone buried beneath the pavement. What followed was one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in the Americas: the unearthing of the Templo Mayor, the sacred center of the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. As excavations expanded beneath the modern city, archaeologists encountered a series of carefully constructed burial pits surrounding the Great Temple. Inside were human remains arranged with ritual precision, skulls stacked in racks, skeletons adorned with ceremonial ornaments, and offerings placed with deliberate symbolism. These were not ordinary burials. They were the physical remnants of a belief system built on sacrifice, and they revealed a civilization that believed the survival of the universe depended on human blood. The Templo Mayor was dedicated primarily to two deities: Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and the sun, and Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility. According to Aztec cosmology, the sun required nourishment in the form of human hearts and blood to continue its daily journey across the sky. Without these offerings, the world risked falling into eternal darkness. Archaeological evidence from the site supports this belief with chilling clarity. Excavators uncovered mass graves containing warriors captured in battle, as well as individuals adorned in costumes representing deities. Many skeletons bore marks of ritual execution, cut marks on ribs indicating heart extraction, decapitation wounds, and dismemberment patterns consistent with ceremonial practices. Among the most striking discoveries were the Sompantli, or skull racks. Thousands of human skulls were found either mounted on wooden racks or incorporated into temple architecture. Recent excavations revealed a cylindrical tower constructed entirely of human skulls, bonded with lime mortar, standing as a permanent monument to sacrifice. These displays were not hidden. They were placed in public view, serving as both religious offerings and political statements. The message was unmistakable. The Aztec state possessed the divine authority and military power to command life itself. Historical accounts from Spanish chroniclers, though often exaggerated, align in part with archaeological findings. Ritual ceremonies, especially during major temple dedications, involve large-scale sacrifices conducted in highly organized sequences. Victims were led up the temple steps, laid upon stone altars, and their hearts removed in swift, practiced motions. Their bodies were then cast down the pyramid stairs, where further ritual processing took place. These acts were accompanied by music, chanting, and elaborate pageantry, transforming death into a sacred spectacle that reinforced both cosmic order and imperial dominance. For decades, scholars debated whether the scale of Aztec sacrifice had been overstated by colonial narratives. However, the mounting physical evidence from the Templo Mayor confirms that ritual killing was a central and institutionalized component of Aztec religion and governance. Sacrifice was not merely an expression of faith, it was a mechanism of control, a demonstration of power, and a unifying force that bound society to a shared cosmological destiny. The graves surrounding the Templo Mayor reveal a civilization where devotion, warfare, and state authority converged in ritualized death. The Aztecs did not view sacrifice as cruelty, but as necessity, an exchange that sustained the cosmos itself. Yet behind the sacred justification lay a system that normalized violence on an extraordinary scale, embedding it within the very identity of the empire. If an entire civilization could be organized around the belief that human sacrifice was essential for survival, then the boundary between faith and fear becomes dangerously thin. And when power is justified by the promise of cosmic stability, who could dare question the cost? Top 5 Viking Ship Burials. In 1904, a farmer plowing his land near the town of Tønsberg in Norway struck wood buried deep beneath the soil. What followed was the excavation of one of the most extraordinary burial sites of the Viking Age, the Oseberg ship burial. As archaeologists carefully uncovered the site, a remarkably preserved wooden ship emerged, measuring over 70 feet long and intricately carved with serpentine patterns and mythological motifs. But it was not the ship itself that sent a chill through the excavation team. Inside the burial chamber lay the remains of two high-status women, surrounded by luxurious goods, animals, and unsettling evidence that this voyage to the afterlife had required more than wealth and craftsmanship. It had required sacrifice. The Oseberg burial, dating to around 834 CE, contained an astonishing array of grave goods, richly decorated sleds, wagons, textiles, tapestries, household items, and ceremonial objects. 15 horses, 6 dogs, and 2 oxen had been killed and placed within the burial mound, suggesting a belief that the deceased would require transport, protection, and status in the next world. While the Oseberg site itself did not contain clear human sacrificial victims beyond the 2 principal burials, other Viking-era discoveries, and crucially, historical eyewitness accounts, reveal a darker and more violent funerary tradition among Norse elites. One of the most vivid descriptions comes from Ahmad ibn Falan, a 10th century Arab diplomat who witnessed the funeral of a Viking chieftain along the Volga River. His account details a ritual both elaborate and deeply disturbing. After the chieftain's death, a slave girl volunteered, or was compelled, to accompany him into the afterlife. Over several days, she was ritually prepared, intoxicated, and paraded through the camp in a ceremony that blended reverence with inevitability. On the final day, she was led aboard a ship containing the chieftain's body. There, in a ritual witnessed by the entire community, she was strangled and stabbed by a ceremonial executioner before the ship was set ablaze and sent off as a fiery vessel to the realm of the dead. Archaeological evidence from Viking burials across Scandinavia and Eastern Europe supports Ibn Fadlan's account. Graves have been found containing multiple individuals buried simultaneously, often with signs of violent death. Some skeletons show cut marks, decapitation, or positioning that suggests they were placed as attendants rather than honored equals. These findings indicate that human sacrifice, though not universal, was a recognized and ritually significant component of elite Viking funerals, especially for powerful leaders. For the Vikings, death was not an end, but a transition to another realm, Valhalla, Folkvanger, or other mythological domains, where status, honor, and companionship continued. To ensure a proper journey and an appropriate existence beyond death, the deceased required servants, animals, weapons, and symbols of prestige. Sacrifice was framed as an act of loyalty and honor, reinforcing social hierarchies even in death. The spectacle of such funerals also served a powerful social function among the living. They demonstrated the wealth, influence, and authority of the deceased's lineage, sending a clear message about power that extended beyond the grave. Despite the dramatic nature of these rituals, early interpretations often romanticized Viking burials as noble send-offs befitting heroic warriors. Only through a combination of archaeological evidence and historical testimony has the harsher reality come into focus. These ceremonies were not merely about honoring the dead, they were public displays of control, loyalty, and the willingness of a society to sanctify death in service of hierarchy and belief. The Viking ship burials reveal a culture where honor and obedience could demand the ultimate sacrifice. Fire, steel, and ritual transformed death into a spectacle of power and devotion. If loyalty was proven through death itself, then the line between reverence and coercion becomes difficult to trace. And in a world where the journey to the afterlife required human companions, the question remains, how much of that loyalty was freely given, and how much was shaped by the weight of tradition and expectation? Top 6. Qin Shi Huang's tomb. In 1974, a group of farmers digging a well near the city of Xi'an in China's Shanxi province struck fragments of clay unlike anything they had ever seen. What began as a simple search for water quickly transformed into one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Beneath the soil lay rows upon rows of life-size terracotta warriors, each uniquely detailed, standing in silent formation as if awaiting orders. As excavations expanded, it became clear that this was no ordinary burial. It was a vast underground empire constructed for one man, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. Yet beyond the grandeur of the terracotta army lay a darker reality, one marked by secrecy, sacrifice, and the ruthless exercise of absolute power. The mausoleum complex of Qin Shi Huang, who died in 210 BCE, spans an estimated 38 square miles, making it one of the largest burial sites ever created. Ancient historian Sima Qian described the tomb as a subterranean palace complete with rivers and seas of mercury, mechanical traps designed to repel intruders, and a ceiling adorned to resemble the night sky. Modern scientific surveys have detected unusually high concentrations of mercury in the soil surrounding the central tomb mound, lending credibility to these ancient accounts. But while the terracotta warriors were crafted to symbolically protect the emperor, archaeological and historical evidence suggests that real human lives were also sacrificed to preserve his eternal dominion. Excavations around the mausoleum have uncovered mass graves containing the remains of laborers, prisoners, and artisans. Many of these individuals show signs of harsh working conditions, malnutrition, and violent death. Some burial pits contain skeletons with iron shackles still attached to their limbs, indicating they were likely forced laborers who perished during construction. More disturbingly, historical records and archaeological findings suggest that after the emperor's death, numerous craftsmen and workers who knew the secrets of the tomb's design were executed and buried within the complex to ensure its mysteries remained hidden. The tomb was not only a monument to immortality, but also a sealed vault of knowledge, guarded by the silence of the dead. Ancient texts also describe the burial of concubines who had borne no heirs, entombed to accompany the emperor in the afterlife. While direct archaeological evidence of these specific burials remains limited due to the central tomb's unexcavated status, the discovery of multiple human remains within the broader mausoleum complex supports the existence of such practices. The emperor's vision of the afterlife was not symbolic. It was a continuation of his earthly rule, complete with an army, servants, and a fully functioning imperial court beneath the ground. The construction of this immense necropolis required hundreds of thousands of workers over several decades. It was a project that demonstrated not only technological sophistication, but also the immense human cost of absolute authority. The terracotta warriors, with their individualized faces and detailed armor, often capture the imagination of the world. Yet they also serve as a silent contrast to the real people who labored, suffered, and died to bring the emperor's vision to life and to secrecy. For centuries, the true scale and darker aspects of Qin Shi Huang's burial practices remained obscured by legend and awe. The magnificence of the terracotta army overshadowed the grim evidence of human sacrifice and forced death embedded within the site. As research continues, the mausoleum stands as both a marvel of ancient engineering and a stark reminder of the extremes of imperial power. The tomb of Qin Shi Huang reveals a ruler who sought to conquer not only the known world, but also death itself. His underground empire was designed to ensure eternal control, enforced through fear, secrecy, and sacrifice. If an emperor could command an army of clay and a host of human lives to serve him beyond the grave, then the boundaries between ambition, divinity, and tyranny blur into a single, haunting legacy. And if the heart of his tomb remains unopened to this day, what truths about power and mortality still lie sealed beneath the earth? Top 7 Mocha Sacrifice Burials. In the arid deserts of northern Peru, where windswept sands conceal the remnants of ancient civilizations, archaeologists uncovered a series of discoveries that would fundamentally reshape our understanding of ritual violence in the pre-Columbian Americas. At sites such as Huaca de la Luna and Sipan, evidence emerged of a society that integrated human sacrifice into its religious, political, and environmental response systems. These were not isolated acts of brutality. They were structured, repeated, and deeply embedded within the worldview of the Moche civilization, which flourished between approximately 100 and 800 CE. The breakthrough came in the 1990s at Huaca de la Luna, a massive ceremonial complex near modern-day Trujillo. Excavations revealed layers of human remains, primarily young adult males, stacked and scattered across ritual platforms. Many skeletons showed clear signs of violent death: throats cut, limbs dismembered, and skulls bearing blunt force trauma. Some bodies were found bound, stripped of clothing, and left exposed to the elements before burial. The positioning and condition of the remains indicated that these individuals were likely captured warriors, sacrificed in highly ritualized ceremonies, rather than buried through conventional funerary practices. What made these findings particularly compelling was their striking correlation with Moche iconography. Pottery, murals, and metalwork created by the Moche vividly depict scenes of ritual combat, prisoner capture, and ceremonial sacrifice. One recurring motif, known as the sacrifice ceremony, shows bound captives being led by warriors to a ritual platform where priests extract their blood into goblets. These goblets are then presented to elite figures, possibly rulers or high priests, in a symbolic act of divine communion. For decades, scholars debated whether these images were mythological or symbolic. The discoveries at Huaca de la Luna provided undeniable proof that these scenes were literal representations of real events. Further reinforcing this connection, bioarchaeological analyses revealed that the sacrificed individuals were not local residents but came from diverse regions, supporting the theory that they were war captives. Isotopic studies of their bones and teeth showed variations in diet and geography, confirming they were outsiders brought in through conflict. The sacrifices often coincided with periods of environmental stress, particularly intense El Niño events that brought catastrophic flooding, followed by drought. In this context, human sacrifice appears to have been a desperate yet ritualized attempt to appease powerful deities believed to control nature's destructive forces. The tomb of the Lord of Sipan, discovered in 1987, offered another dimension to Mocha funerary practices. This richly adorned elite burial contained not only extraordinary treasures of gold, silver, and turquoise, but also the remains of several individuals buried alongside the ruler. These included a warrior, women believed to be attendants, a child, and even a guard whose feet had been deliberately amputated, possibly to ensure he remained eternally stationed at his post. Animals such as llamas and a dog were also interred within the tomb. The arrangement of these bodies demonstrated a carefully planned ritual, reinforcing the ruler's power and status in both life and death. The Moshi did not leave written records, but their art and the archaeological evidence together paint a vivid picture of a society where sacrifice was both a sacred duty and a political instrument. By publicly enacting these rituals, Moche elites reinforced their divine authority and demonstrated their ability to mediate between the human and supernatural worlds. The spectacle of sacrifice served to unify communities, intimidate rivals, and reaffirm the cosmic order during times of uncertainty. For years, the sophistication of Moche art and engineering overshadowed the darker aspects of their culture. However, the sacrificial burials reveal a civilization where ritual violence was not hidden, but celebrated as a necessary force for survival and stability. The blending of religion, environmental anxiety, and political power created a system in which human life could be offered as a solution to both natural and social crises. The Moche sacrifice burials expose a stark reality. In moments of fear and instability, societies may turn to extreme measures justified by belief and authority. If the Moche viewed sacrifice as a vital negotiation with the forces of nature, then the line between survival and brutality becomes profoundly blurred. And when leaders claim the power to restore balance through ritual death, how easily can devotion become a tool of control? Top 8. Scythian Kurgan burials, high in the frozen expanse of the Altai Mountains, where the borders of modern-day Russia, Mongolia, China, and Kazakhstan converge. Ancient burial mounds known as kurgans have preserved some of the most haunting relics of the nomadic Scythian world. Hidden beneath layers of earth and permafrost, these tombs remain sealed for over 2 millennia. When archaeologists began excavating the Pazyryk kurgans in the mid-20th century, they uncovered a chilling tableau of power, loyalty, and ritual sacrifice, perfectly preserved by ice, as if time itself had paused to guard their secrets. The Scythians, a confederation of nomadic tribes who dominated the Eurasian steppes from roughly the 9th to the 2nd century BCE, were renowned for their horsemanship, warfare, and intricate gold craftsmanship. But their burial practices reveal a darker dimension of their culture. Royal kurgans were monumental undertakings, constructed to honor elite leaders and ensure their continued dominance in the afterlife. Inside these burial chambers, archaeologists discovered not only the mummified remains of chieftains adorned in elaborate garments and jewelry, but also the bodies of sacrificed attendants, warriors, and horses, each placed with deliberate ritual significance. One of the most remarkable discoveries was the Pazyryk burial complex, where frozen conditions preserved organic materials rarely seen in ancient tombs. Within these kurgans, researchers found tattooed bodies, finely woven textiles, wooden chariots, and saddles decorated with intricate animal motifs. Surrounding the central burial were the remains of numerous horses, often arranged in rows, fully bridled and equipped with ornate harnesses. These animals were not simply offerings. They were intended to serve the deceased in the next world, symbolizing status, mobility, and martial strength. Human sacrifice was an equally significant component of these burials. In several kurgans, the remains of attendants and guards were found positioned around the principal burial chamber. Many showed no signs of prolonged struggle, suggesting they were executed in controlled, ritualized circumstances. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus provides a chilling account that aligns closely with these archaeological findings. He described how, after a Scythian king's death, servants, concubines, and horses were sacrificed and buried with him. A year later, additional attendants were reportedly killed and interred around the tomb, mounted on stakes in a grim display of continued loyalty beyond death. The meticulous arrangement of bodies and artifacts within the kurgans reflects a belief system in which the social hierarchy of the living was replicated in the afterlife. Leaders were not expected to journey alone. They were accompanied by their court, their protectors, and their symbols of power. The sacrifices reinforced the authority of the deceased while also serving as a powerful message to the living. Loyalty to the leader was eternal, and the bonds of service extended beyond the grave. For decades, the artistic achievements of the Scythians, especially their exquisite gold ornaments and animal-style art, captured the imagination of historians and the public alike. Yet the frozen kurgans reveal that beneath this artistic sophistication lay a culture where ritualized death was an accepted expression of devotion and power. The preservation of these tombs in ice offers an unusually intimate glimpse into the emotional and social realities of ancient nomadic life, where honor, fear, and obligation were intertwined. The Scythian royal burials demonstrate how deeply the concept of loyalty was embedded in their worldview. Sacrifice was not merely a symbolic gesture, it was a tangible extension of authority into eternity. In a society constantly on the move, where survival depended on unity and strength, the ultimate act of allegiance was to accompany a leader even in death. If entire retinues were expected to follow their rulers into the afterlife, then loyalty was not just a virtue, it was a mandate. And in a world where death did not sever the bonds of power, how much of that loyalty was born from honor, and how much from the unspoken weight of expectation and fear? Top 9. Maya Sacred Cenote. In the dense jungles of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula lies Chichen Itza, one of the most iconic cities of the ancient Maya civilization. While its towering pyramid, El Castillo, draws millions of visitors each year, a darker and more mysterious feature rests quietly nearby: the sacred cenote. This natural sinkhole, filled with deep green water and surrounded by steep limestone walls, was not merely a water source. For centuries, it served as a portal to the underworld, a sacred gateway through which the Maya communicated with their gods. Beneath its still surface, archaeologists would eventually uncover a chilling record of ritual devotion, desperation, and power. In the early 20th century, American diplomat and amateur archaeologist Edward H. Thompson undertook a controversial and ambitious project. Using dredging equipment, he began extracting objects and remains from the depths of the sacred cenote. What emerged was a startling collection of artifacts: gold, jade, copper bells, pottery, incense burners, and intricately carved ornaments. But alongside these treasures were human bones. Over time, hundreds of skeletal remains were recovered, belonging to individuals of varying ages and social backgrounds. The cenote was not a burial site in the traditional sense. It was a place of offering where human lives were cast into the depths as sacrifices to the gods. The Maya believed that cenotes were entrances to Xibalba, the mythological underworld. The sacred cenote at Chichen Itza was particularly associated with Chak, the rain god. During periods of drought or environmental stress, rituals intensified as communities sought divine intervention to restore balance and ensure survival. Archaeological and forensic analyses of the recovered remains revealed evidence of both pre- and post-mortem trauma. Some individuals showed signs of ritual killing before being thrown into the water, while others may have been cast alive. The presence of valuable offerings alongside the bodies suggests that these sacrifices were part of elaborate ceremonies intended to appease powerful supernatural forces. Isotopic and osteological studies have provided deeper insight into the identities of the victims. Contrary to earlier assumptions that sacrifices were limited to a specific group, the remains indicate a diverse population, including both locals and individuals from distant regions. This diversity suggests that sacrificial victims may have included war captives, pilgrims, and possibly chosen individuals from within Maya society. The ritual was not random. It was structured, symbolic, and deeply integrated into the religious and political life of the city. The sacred cenote functioned as more than a religious site. It was a powerful instrument of social cohesion and control. Public rituals conducted at its edge reinforced the authority of priests and rulers, who positioned themselves as intermediaries between the people and the gods. The act of sacrifice, witnessed or widely known, reinforced the belief that the prosperity and survival of the community depended on strict adherence to sacred traditions. In times of crisis, the willingness to offer human lives demonstrated both devotion and the ruling class's ability to command ultimate obedience. For many years, the dramatic nature of these discoveries fueled sensational narratives that overshadowed the cultural and spiritual context of the Maya. However, modern archaeology has worked to present a more nuanced understanding. While the rituals were undeniably violent, they were rooted in a complex worldview that linked human action to cosmic balance. Sacrifice was seen not as cruelty, but as a necessary exchange to maintain harmony between the natural and supernatural realms. The sacred cenote of Chichen Itza reveals a civilization where faith, environment, and authority converged in acts of profound consequence. The offerings cast into its depths were expressions of both reverence and fear, reflecting a society that believed survival depended on divine favor. Yet beneath this spiritual framework lay a system in which leaders could legitimize power through ritualized death. If a community's future depended on sacrifices cast into a sacred abyss, then belief became a force capable of overriding compassion. And when survival is tied to ritual obedience, how easily can devotion be shaped into a tool of control? Top 10. Royal Tombs of Aigai. In the rolling hills of northern Greece lies Aigai, the ancient capital of the Macedonian kingdom and the burial ground of its royal lineage. For centuries, this sacred site remained hidden beneath layers of earth and time, its secrets preserved in silence. That silence was broken in 1977 when Greek archaeologist Manolis Andronikos uncovered a series of royal tombs at Vergina, identified as ancient Aigai. Among them was a remarkably intact tomb believed to belong to King Philip II, the father of Alexander the Great. The discovery stunned the world with its wealth of gold, weapons, armor, and ceremonial artifacts. Yet beneath the splendor of royal burial lay subtle but powerful evidence of a darker ritual tradition, one that revealed how Macedonian royalty extended their authority even beyond death. The royal tombs of Aigai were constructed with extraordinary care and symbolism. The main burial chamber typically housed the cremated remains of the king, placed within a golden larnax adorned with the iconic Vergina sun. Surrounding chambers contained weapons, armor, drinking vessels, and items associated with royal ceremony and warfare. These objects were not merely decorative. They signified the king's identity, achievements, and continued status in the afterlife. However, archaeological findings also revealed the presence of sacrificed animals, particularly horses and dogs, buried within or near the tombs. These animals were symbols of nobility, loyalty, and martial prowess, believed to accompany and serve the ruler in the next world. In addition to animal sacrifices, evidence from ancient Macedonian burial practices suggests that human attendance may also have been part of royal funerary rites, especially in earlier periods. Historical accounts and comparative archaeological data from elite burials in the broader Greek and Balkan regions indicate that the death of a king could be marked by the execution or ritual death of close companions, guards, or servants. While direct skeletal evidence within the main tombs at Aigai is limited, the broader cultural context and associated burial patterns point to a tradition where loyalty and service were expected to transcend death. The funerary ceremonies themselves were grand public events, blending mourning with political theater. The royal funeral served as a powerful demonstration of continuity and legitimacy. As the body of the king was honored with lavish offerings and sacrifices, the living were reminded of the enduring strength of the monarchy. The spectacle reinforced the idea that the king's power did not end with his life. Instead, it was immortalized through ritual, memory, and the careful orchestration of burial rites that echoed divine and heroic traditions. The timing of these practices is particularly significant. The Macedonian kingdom was on the cusp of transforming into one of the greatest empires in history under Alexander the Great. The royal tombs of Aigai reflect a culture deeply invested in hero worship, ancestral reverence, and the projection of authority. By surrounding their rulers with symbols of power and sacrifice, the Macedonians created a narrative of eternal kingship. The dead king was not merely remembered, he was enshrined as a lasting source of legitimacy and inspiration for future generations. For many years, the dazzling treasures of Aigai captivated public attention, often overshadowing the more somber implications of the burial rituals. The focus on gold, artistry, and historical significance masked the underlying message embedded in the funerary practices. These tombs were not only monuments of honor, but also instruments of power, reinforcing social hierarchy and the expectation of unwavering loyalty. The royal tombs of Aigai reveal a civilization that understood the political power of death. Through sacrifice, symbolism, and spectacle, Macedonian rulers ensured that their authority endured beyond the grave. In honoring their kings with such elaborate and sometimes grim rituals, they transformed burial into a statement of eternal dominance. If even in death a ruler could command loyalty, sacrifice, and reverence, then the true strength of ancient power may have rested not only in armies and conquests, but in the ability to shape belief itself. And when a society builds its legacy on the immortalization of authority, where does reverence end and control truly begin? Across continents and millennia, the burials we have explored reveal a haunting pattern, one in which death was not merely an end, but a carefully orchestrated extension of power. From the royal courts of Ur and Abydos to the ceremonial platforms of the Aztecs, from the frozen kurgans of the Scythians to the vast mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, these ancient civilizations transformed burial into a stage for authority, belief, and control. What lies beneath the earth is not just the story of how people died, but how societies chose to define loyalty, divinity, and order. These extreme burial practices were often framed as sacred duties, acts of devotion meant to secure favor from gods or ensure harmony in the afterlife. Yet the archaeological evidence tells a more complex and unsettling story. Many of these rituals were meticulously organized, publicly displayed, and deeply embedded within political systems. Human and animal sacrifices, mass graves, and elaborate funerary spectacles were not random or isolated events. They were powerful tools that reinforced hierarchy, legitimized rulers, and instilled a collective sense of obedience, shaped by both faith and fear. What makes these discoveries especially compelling is how they challenge the traditional image of ancient civilizations as purely enlightened cradles of culture and progress. Beneath their achievements in architecture, art, and governance lay systems capable of profound violence, justified through religion, tradition, and the pursuit of cosmic balance. These burials force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The foundations of some of history's greatest societies were built not only on innovation and cooperation, but also on sacrifice and control. Yet these practices also reflect the deep human desire to understand death and maintain connection beyond it. In their own worldview, these civilizations were preserving order, honoring leaders, and safeguarding the future. The line between devotion and domination, between sacred duty and enforced loyalty, was often blurred, sometimes deliberately. As we unearth these silent testimonies from the past, we are left with a powerful question. Were these extreme burial rituals genuine expressions of spiritual belief, or were they carefully constructed systems designed to maintain power through fear, even beyond the grave? If these revelations about the dark foundations of ancient power have changed the way you look at history, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. We are excavating the truths that time tried to bury. Join us as we unearth the past to understand our future. The next vault of history will be open soon.